Can you tell the audience a little bit about you and who you are so they understand a bit of context, what you do?
Sure. So I'm Oana Damian. I am a founder and director of Damazo Group. But in my background, I have done aviation since about 8 years now. So both from on the airport side, so advising on airport transactions worldwide, but also from an innovation perspective, working for Sabre, who some of you here would know, the reservation system, and I built their first innovation program for EMEA, so that's Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and that was corporate innovation. A funny anecdote, actually. So I was born in Transylvania, Romania. I am a British citizen now. I live in London, work worldwide. But when it came to choosing the name of my company, Damazo, it took quite a while to actually find it. But Damazo is actually the Greek origin of Damian. So Damian, Damianos, and Damianos comes from Damazo, which means to master, to overcome, and to achieve.
Wow. Well, I could almost finish the panel on that because it's very powerful, actually. Yes, you can. So you mentioned two things, but I'll start with the second one, actually, the innovation. So I just want, because corporate innovation is something that a lot of people have on their minds. I'm being approached every half a second about we need to do innovation, we need to innovate, and you know that's the word. We need to be agile. That's the other word, actually, that everybody comes up to. I'm not sure that you guys have this requirement, or maybe you have the willingness. What were you doing, because when we say innovation program from Sabre, even if you guys are not working in the direct in GDSs, what does it entail? What are the lessons, the stuff that you've learned that could actually be something that you would replicate in other companies?
So innovation was sitting at the top of every town hall agenda. Innovation, everyone was mentioning innovation and how they innovate in product development. But that's the thing, like innovation was stuck within a department, and that was the product development department, and that's their job, right? They have to build products that kind of respond to the current needs of the customers. But that's from their thinking, sitting in a development lab and putting forward products, right? Whereas what corporate innovation does is enabling everyone to have a voice. So from the salesperson that meets directly with the customer, and that's the feedback, the direct feedback that you get straight away, to someone sitting in at a director's desk and seeing things such as operational efficiencies and things that could be done. So it's giving a voice to everyone. But how do you do that? And they launched at some point just before I joined, because this was a new role. They didn't have someone to deal directly with innovation, and let alone build a program of innovation. So they just called out and said, send us innovation ideas. And they had about 300 ideas that landed on the senior vice president's table, but no one knew what to do with them. And they said, okay, just put them in an Excel and we'll evaluate them. And I said, how are you supposed to do this with Excel or SharePoint or all these things that is like, so I took them and I fought a lot of battles, but you'll be surprised to find out that there are innovation management softwares out there, because that's what technology does, right? It looks at things that can be improved, and it uses the parameters that it can to improve that. So I used one of the innovation management softwares that was out there. It didn't even cost much, but even for that, I think it was about 50K a year. So, but even for that, I had to fight battles, because even though everyone was talking about innovation, no one actually knew how to do it or wanted to invest it. It sounds great, but when it comes to funding, so I think it's switching also the mentality from what is innovation. Is it just a bunch of people having ideas and then we'll see how they fit, or actually looking at it from what is the business problem that we are having? We're launching that in the program on the platform as a business problem that we are asking the employees, our people, to come back with solutions, right? And before that, we also have secured funding. So we have the funding, we have the business issue, and now what we're looking is for ideas to solve that. So that was the program, and in about a year, it escalated to about 2,500 users within the organization, the whole EMEA, everyone was talking about it, you know, Ignite, Ignite. It was headline in every town hall. But it, you know, it worked, and the program is still there, and it's being used.
So what I liked about it is that you said, because I think it's the essence, I think it's a wrong question to ask often. People say, what is innovation? The most important question is, where does innovation come from? Or at least, how do we liberate the forces that do create innovation?
Yeah.
And you said the voices of the employees, which is also what David said earlier when he was talking about culture, is about allowing people within the organization, because they are dealing with the problem at hand every day. They are seeing it. It's not 5 levels up or even 2 levels up, where you might just have a report and maybe the person is afraid of telling you exactly what's going on, because that happens, obviously, especially in family-run businesses. So having this voice of the people is something, I guess, that in your case created also satisfaction with the employees.
It did, and communication as well between different levels, and understanding, you know, salespeople knowing what directors do and vice versa, and what are the actual concerns that the business poses.
So that was in your past. So now in your present, you're dealing with airports. We all know, the first thing you meet in a country is the airport. So thank God you guys changed the airport in 2001, because we all have the good memories of our old airport here, which I still see, by the way. I don't know what you're doing with the runway over there, but I remember also, for instance, living in the Philippines. I don't know if every one of you has traveled there, and the airport is absolutely a disaster. They actually now kind of opened a new terminal, but it was literally raining inside. So that's the first thing people see. It's the experience of the airport, and including sometimes the experience of the airport, the food and the services offered. So you now work with airports, and I know you travel. I said I was traveling a lot, and then there's a next level, which is next to me, because she's going to the most random places. They're not random, but it seems like you are in airports in the middle of Brazil, for instance. So can you maybe tell a little bit the audience what you do for these airports and how you help them becoming better airports?
So what I do is I work for the private sector or the government side on airport privatization, so PPPs, just what happened in Athens. That's what I do for airports globally. So I would work with, you know, Athens is partly owned by PSP Investments in co-ownership with the state. So in Brazil, it's the same. When they privatized a few airports, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, I worked on the side of the government to help them put a valuation on the asset, and then from there launch it to the private community for it to be privatized or concession for 25, 30 years. Or if it's buy side, then I would work with people such as PSP Investments or, you know, Fraport or ADP or others, or other investors from around the world that are interested in getting these concessions. So in that case, what I do is go and see the asset, understand it from an operational and financial perspective, and then translate that into forecasts that go up to 25, 30 years of how the airport would actually perform. So obviously within that, I consider not only the impact of the developing infrastructure, but also the trends, the travel trends, how travelers will behave, what the numbers are saying, where they're going to. And funnily enough, you know, IATA says that in just less than 2 decades, the travel industry will double. So there will be close to 8 billion passengers traveling through air, you know, worldwide, and half of that, or more than half of that, is supposed to come from Asia Pacific. Yes. So, you know, thinking about the challenges that poses to infrastructure, yeah, it's a lot of opportunity, it's a lot of, you know, money, revenue coming in, but then you have the challenges on the infrastructure side from building larger airports, from, you know, they can't cope with that. So even if, so then what is the next step that you look at? Is not building the biggest and largest, you know, like they just did in Istanbul, airport in the world, because, you know.
Well, it's not finished yet. They promised us October 30th.
We'll see. So, yes, we'll see. But that is an impressive project.
It is.
and Mexico, but we'll see what happens to that.
The referendum will
Yes,
say.
because there are some issues there. But it's not only about that, because not, you know, you don't have the capacity and you don't have the financial means to do that in every other city.
And you have the noise constraints. More and more people are against airports as well, right?
So then what do? You turn to technology, right? So you utilize technology to improve processes. You collaborate with governments to find ways to deal with that capacity. So from using technology within the infrastructure, but also, you know, moving some of the processes of airport, and this is something that would then impact the city itself. So having let's say a bag drop location somewhere in the city, and then bags are being transported to the airport so that you release that check-in area, right? Then
the self-help as well, the fact that we're using our phones directly instead of going to check-ins, that we have also the e-gates. They just installed them, actually. I'm very happy in Athens, so you are self-helping yourself all the time, which is a cost reason. I mean, it's simply the flow as well, I guess, right?
And also, you know, ultimately, it's the One ID program that IATA is putting forward, the digital identity. We would all literally just walk through airports, passport-free, and with all the sensors and biometrics and, you know, blockchain-enabled nodes of our personal information to sit somewhere in a decentralized system. We'll all just be walking through airports, and they will know who we are and the fact that we don't pose a threat, and that will also release a lot of the processes and create efficiencies. Now, I don't know if that is wishful thinking, or, you know, me as a digital nomad would love to see that very close in my lifetime, but we'll see. I mean,
I think what is interesting, let's break it down. I think it's interesting there's a passenger experience, which we'll come back to, but there's the infrastructure. I know that Greek infrastructure, not the airport though, that's actually, you can see that the airport was built, I don't know how many times you've come to Athens, the new one.
It's my second time.
Were clearly built with an outcome in the future, because even though you had, for instance, this past summer a lot of tourists, it never felt completely full. You go to other places, of course, Dubai now, for instance, the XB seems to be at, but what they did at Dubai, which is an interesting thing, they said, okay, we don't have the room to build another terminal. They just did Terminal 4, and that's it. There's no more room. They have to move to the other airport at some point. What they did, they used technology to accelerate the flows, to say, okay, where are the people actually going? Yeah. Where are the bottlenecks? How can we tell? And to your example, as a feedback mechanism, our airports like in Cincinnati will tell you when you leave the hotel how big are the security queues. So say, oh, don't worry, you don't have to leave now, you still have some time. Yeah. But all these things that can help the flow, because again, it's the first experience that people have is the airport. But we'll come maybe back to infrastructure depending on time, but I want to think about also how you enhance the airport experience with more entertaining things. And obviously, one of the part of what you do when you evaluate the asset is, and you see that in a lot of airports that are government-owned, the shops suck, right? Because they never really care. There's some space, retail, and that's it. How do you see that changing? Do you see airports becoming actual, you know, shopping malls and destinations? It seems sometimes in Asia that they are. Do you see that? Is something that you think airports are interested just simply to make money, but also to offer a better experience to their users?
I think that is the area that I specialize in, which is non-aeronautical revenue, so commercial revenue. Anything that, you know, when you go through airports and you see the duty-frees that are like that, winded walkthrough, blame me. I'm the one that recommends that, so I'm sorry.
There's always a shortcut, if you know them.
There is, yes, but you have to know it. Before you know it, you're already in.
Yes.
So there's not much you can do. But that's the thing, like airports have become, or are supposed to become, destinations in their own right. And what airports are doing still, and what they could do more of, or instead of replicating what's within an airport into every other airport, which, yeah, fits the model of luxury brands or, you know, your well-known cafe brands and stuff, you want to create a sense of place, because as you just said, the moment that you step into an airport, that is the first connection that you have with the destination in itself. So what does that mean? Creating a sense of place actually means involving a lot more the community and teaching them how to perform from a business perspective within an airport, because a lot of times they don't know, right? Like in Brazil, for example, they have this, they have a public tender. That's how they get the brands into the airport, but it's about who bids more. And because they have no idea what it makes sense from a business perspective, then they just bid a lot to, you know, to pay to be part or have their operations in an airport, and that's not sustainable, because eventually they end up not making money. So it's an education exercise in which you educate them how to operate within an airport, but very much so including the brands that are local, so that you create a sense of place, which is what they do in, you know, Changi, Singapore. Those are the most highly rated airports in the world from a passenger perspective, but also from a commercial revenue perspective. So it goes to say something.
Yeah, it's true. Incheon they're doing the same now. They're trying to build as a destination. But interestingly, to Greece, even smaller airports now that I've experienced, which are regional airports, which usually are not hubs and just linked to the capital, and you have so many here around in Greece, you see this trend also happen. I don't know if you've seen it, you see this trend happening, or you really feel, and I'm going to make up the example because I'm not sure, but you really feel, for instance, you land in, let's say, Skiathos, and you'll say, oh, I feel that I'm in a different airport than if I were in Mykonos. And that's a bit the idea. And you see that being developed in some, not everywhere, it's still early, in some cities, especially again because the government is offloading the assets simply for cost reasons, and those smart enough to realize that they can create a sense of place can actually do it, including at small airports. Have you seen a smaller airports trying to do this, or not yet? Because I think it's very new.
It's still a new, well, Lisbon, but that's not small. They have a corner that's called Taste of Portugal, which is really nice. And that's what all they do is focus and highlight, you know, local brands. But this goes back to, you know, the era in which we live in which it's not about owning things anymore. It's not about buying, it's about experiencing. So what you want to do also when you get into an airport, you want to experience that, and you want to share it with your friends. And you know, when I was saying earlier about how most than half of the travel in the next 2 decades, air traffic is actually coming from Asia Pacific, a lot of that is Chinese consumer. And I know that even in Greece, I was reading an article, this year they were expecting a 50% increase in the Chinese travelers. So if we're looking at that particular segment, and they're the highest travel spenders in the world, they at 21% of the travel spend is linked to Chinese purchases. So that is from goods, from services, from hotels, from air travel, from everything like that. So, you know, it's tapping into different segments and understanding how is it that they now consume travel, and extrapolating from not just the Chinese, but also, you know, travelers in general. How do we travel now? How do we work now? The work mode has shifted from just going into a comforting 9-to-5 job into being digital nomads. We're not talking about, we were just saying that in the break, right? We are not talking about tourists anymore. We're talking about business people that own their businesses, that do tourism in their 2-hour lunch break before they get onto their next conference call. They might as well be sitting in Mykonos in a nice hotel or in Namos Beach, right? So,
well, or I will add, sorry to interrupt, I will add, even in Athens, I mean, this is how I travel. You know me, I mean, we're very similar. Everything is a business travel, but I will always have 3 hours suddenly to do something, and I'll be in a city. And you can see that cities, no matter how advanced they are not ready for that type of experience. I mean, I know Athens, I'm here and I have 3 hours, I know what to do and I will have a good time. But most people that come here for a conference, you know, MICE or etc., might not have that. And more and more, because you said about the consultants and digital nomads, I don't like that term, but I'll run with it for you. No, because digital nomads nowadays is basically going to Indonesia, right, to Bali. That's what it means actually with digital nomads.
That's what it means in your perspective.
And you need to have the right passport, because as long as you have 145 countries with visa-free, you can be a digital nomad. Sorry to be challenging you on that one. But anyway, the point is that even corporate travel, we see that. We see a lot more corporate travelers that, because they all seek that work-life balance, the company will allow for free time. We even allow for the spouse to come travel with them for some long-term trips. So that creates a new dynamic where you have not only you going, you know, the life we used to have in the movies, you know, you go to the hotel for the conference, back to the hotel, to the airport and back. No, you have time and you want to. Because that's how you live as well, right?
That's exactly how I live, yeah. My computer is my office and I can be anywhere, everywhere, and it's just a matter of being and staying productive.
So are you seeing that the places you go to, maybe Greece, is catering for that or not yet?
I don't think that is happening yet. I mean, it's happening with places like WeWork where you have, you know, you have a shared workspace, but I think in terms of promoting the experience, the travel experience, that you can, what is it that you can do in those 2 hours? Because decisions are immediate. You don't know when you'll have time. It's not a package tour. It's everything that is, you know, you're there, you have your phone, so everything has to be there from an offering perspective, so you know exactly what to do, when to do, and how to do it. And time is limited. Decisions are made really quickly, and there's an after effect as well. My experience will then be shared on the 15 channels that I'm on, and those people will then share my experience and come back and do it. So it's also, you know, it's a before factor, but it's also an after factor. And how is it that companies are prepared for that? Because as it was said at the beginning by the Ministry of Tourism, travel is not just airports, or travel is not just hotels. Travel is a collaboration of all these you know, institutions, from the little family store that's on the back street behind our hotel to, you know, big hotel chains or airlines. It's the entire experience. So then how is it that the services are promoted, and how is it that me as a time-limited business traveler / tourist, I choose, and how do I make sure that, or how does the brand make sure that what I experience is something that is worth sharing and that other people will get convinced by it? And, you know, going back to the Chinese, for example, yeah, there is I suppose most of you know about WeChat, right? Which is the platform that is used for communication. It's now used for payments, it's used for advertising. So let's say that in the Western world, we kind of have ideas of how to promote and to whom and using what channels. Let's say we go to Facebook, we go to Instagram, we go to all of these. But then if we want to prepare for the next 10, 20 years when traffic is supposed to double, then are we ready from a platform perspective and knowledge perspective to be where our travelers will be in the future and not just now? So what is that behavior? What is it that they do? There are 1 billion monthly users on WeChat, 900 million daily active users on WeChat. So the platforms are there, but the challenge is, how do we get ourselves there as brands to, you know, to promote our services and to make sure that our experiences are then shareable?
It's actually, because even if you don't think about the Chinese, which, you know, a lot of people in Asia Pacific have leapfrogged our legacy. You know, they haven't had to deal with PC. The first ever thing they discovered, the internet, it was on a mobile phone. For us, we have a little bit of, especially me because I'm older, we have a little bit of this transition. So the habits that you mentioned are not only in the Chinese or Asia Pacific, the habit of, I arrive somewhere and I open Google Maps or I open Instagram to see what I could do next to me is really there. And it's hard because discovery explodes suddenly. It's not, I'm not going to Google Greece, Athens, you know, or something. And also to your sharing point and to the fact that associations like this and people like this are working together, you mentioned experiences on the ground. I end up, maybe I'm specific, but I love doing photography. I will find Athenians that do photo walks, and those are not advertised by any Ministry of Tourism. They're just people that have to share the same passion as me, and I'll reach out and say, hey, I have 1 hour, can you do me like the cool things that I don't know about Athens, you know? And he or she will walk with me, sometimes in a group, and these are all things that are part of the experience, and more people are seeking like varied experience, not the traditional tour guide thing.
And many times now, because it's not, yeah, you still have the, you know, the wallet walkers, as they call them, the Chinese. There is this, you know, post-1985 millennials that are mostly female, and they go and they love their shopping destinations, and they go for the highest of everything, highest service,
Luxury.
highest hotel, highest luxury, everything. And the reason I talk about so much about Chinese is because of what I do. Because when I do evaluate the commercial potential at an airport, I obviously look at the share of Chinese passengers, and that's why I need to understand their behaviors. I need to understand how is it that I can treat, and what is the, you know, the X amount, that the growth index, if you want to call it like that, that I can associate to a particular type of revenue. In this case would be luxury and duty free, that is associated to Chinese consumers.
But there's also the other type of Chinese. That's very interesting.
But there's also the other type.
They're going faster because we are generations, we see like our parents did something, our grandparents did something, and us. So it's easier to kind of segment. Even for me, it's still wrong. Chinese, like Asia Pacific, going super fast. You have both multiple factors at the same time, right?
Yeah.
The other one being more experiential.
The other one is the more experiential. The other one is the one that's born after the 90s, and they're literally born with the mobile phone as an organ. It's like having an extra hand, because that's how they are born, and they're born in an era of prosperity in China, so that's all they know. They come from wealthy families, and they don't go for things anymore. They go for experiences. They have the money to spend, so they will choose there and then, but also, and they will choose based on what their digital device says, so what the networks say, and also what their friends, so it's a lot of peer-to-peer communication and decision-making. That's not, you know, not just the Chinese consumer. That's very particular to them, but it's also, you know, I think the post-90 worldwide, because it's a different type of travel segment that I think has to be very much looked at, because that's the next generation of travelers, right, for the next 2 decades.
I have -1 minute, but I'll still go for one last. I know they're going to hate me in the back. Just quickly, because I think it's interesting as well, it's pure technology, but there's also a trend that I've seen as well, is the use of technology like augmented reality to pre-see what you're going to see. Right? And some people are using, have you seen that as well?
I've seen that a lot. Like travel agencies now use that augmented reality. You have that integrated in platforms like, you know, Facebook, Snapchat, even mobile phones. Now the new generation of mobile phones are AR enabled. So throughout this, you know, they want to know where is it that they're going, how is it going to, so we were talking before that, yeah, it's on paper and I'm not really sure how it's going to be. Yeah, you'll be exactly sure how it's going to be. So from a brand or destination perspective, hotel, they need to understand that they have to be prepared to play in that environment and get the technology right, so that they can be, you know, taken into consideration when it comes to AR technology.
Guys, first of all, give a big hand of applause to Oana, please. Thank you.